We will now apply the first law of thermodynamics to compute the heat of reaction and the so-called flame temperature, which is, to be more accurate, the temperature of the burned gases. Initial and final state will be described by a global reaction. A global reaction is formalized as follows. It's written as the sum from K equal 1 to NSP, where NSP is the number of species, of mu prime K chi K, which will give sum from K equal 1 to NSP, mu second K chi K. Nu prime K and nu second K are here the reaction coefficient in front of the reactant and the product, respectively. Chi K is the symbol of the K species. For instance, if we consider methane air combustion, a choice could be to have K1 equal to CH4, K2 would be O2, K3 N2, K4 CO2, and K5 H2O. Prior to the combustion process, a chamber is filled with reactants. These reactants are generally made of fuel and oxidizer only, but in some applications they can also be diluted with other species. The reactive mixture is then characterized by a temperature, a species mass fraction distribution. Superscript 1 here denotes the initial state. In the combustion community, we call the state of this mixture as fresh gases. Typical temperature of fresh gases are ambient temperature, but in many applications, air is preheated, so the fresh gas temperature can reach up to 900 K. This is the case of gas turbines or some industrial combustion chambers. Fresh gases are therefore sometimes very hot. Anyway, under certain conditions, this mixture may burn and give products. These products are characterized by a different thermodynamical state characterized here by superscript 2. Different temperature and different composition. This mixture is called burnt gases. Okay, now we'll see how to determine the heat released by the combustion. For that, we'll introduce a key quantity, which is the standard enthalpy of formation. The standard enthalpy of formation of a substance K is often called the heat of formation of that substance. It is defined as the heat needed to form 1 kg of that substance from its elements in their standard state. Standard state means temperature of 298.15 Kelvin and a pressure of 1 bar. For an element, it is also the stable form of that element at room temperature and 1 bar. What does that mean for combustion? So in combustion, you mainly have 4 elements: hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and carbon. For hydrogen, the stable form is H2 in gaseous form. For oxygen, it's O2 in gaseous form too. For nitrogen is N2, again in gaseous form, whereas for carbon is carbon, but in solid graphite form. By convention, the standard state enthalpy of formation of an element in its stable form is therefore equal to 0. Consequently, the enthalpy of formation of H2 in gaseous form is 0, enthalpy of formation of dioxygen in gaseous form is 0, enthalpy of formation of dinitrogen is 0 too. As for other thermochemical properties, the standard enthalpy of formation in molar unit is defined from the standard enthalpy of formation in mass unit multiplied by the molar mass. Standard enthalpy of formation of main substances have been measured and are available in tables. By knowing the standard enthalpy of formation of a species K, we can deduce the enthalpy of this species at a given temperature T. Indeed, the specific enthalpy of a species K is the sum of the enthalpy of formation of that species plus the integral from T equal to T0, the standard state temperature, to T of Cp key dt, where Cp key is the specific heat capacity of the species key. It is defined as the derivative of the enthalpy by the temperature at a constant pressure. The adjective specific means that the heat capacity is given here in mass unit, so the unity of Cp key is joule per kilogram per Kelvin. Consequently, the unity of enthalpy of the species key is joule per kilogram. If we consider now a mixture composed of NSP species, the heat capacity of the mixture is simply the sum of each species heat capacity weighted by the species mass fraction. In theory, the heat capacity depends on the nature of the species, but it is also a function of the temperature. The question is, are these dependencies significant for flame computations? We will consider as an example the combustion of methane and air. Global reaction for methane and air combustion with CH4 plus 2 O2 plus 3.66 N2. Okay, in air there is 1 mole of O2 for 3.66 mole of N2, standard air composition, and this gives CO2 plus 2H2O plus 2 times 3.66 mole of N2. Here we assume that the reaction takes place under stoichiometric conditions. As N2 does not participate to the reaction, the species mass fraction of N2 is conserved during the reaction. The species mass fraction of N2 in the fresh gases is therefore equal to the species mass fraction of N2 in the burned gases. If we do the math, then we find that the species mass of N2, which is constant, is equal to 0.724. The heat capacity of the mixture can be therefore assimilated to the heat capacity of the N2 in the first approach. The question is at which temperature? Let's plot the evolution of the heat capacity of N2 as a function of the temperature. Unit of Cp is joule per kilogram per Kelvin. In the fresh gases, the temperature is most of the time around 300 Kelvin. At 300 Kelvin, the heat capacity of nitrogen is about 1 kilojoule per kilogram per Kelvin. Typical temperature of burned gases are around 2500 Kelvin. Under this temperature conditions, the heat capacity of nitrogen rise up to 1.3 kilojoule per kilogram per Kelvin. In the first order approximation, there is roughly 30% of variation of heat capacity of the mixture within a flame, which is a lot. So, as a conclusion, Cp varies strongly with temperature, at least in a flame. We now have all the tools to define the mean mixture enthalpy as the sum of the enthalpy of each species weighted by its corresponding species mass fraction. By using the definition of the enthalpy of the species key, one can split this mean mixture enthalpy in two terms. The first term is the sum of the enthalpy of formation of each species key weighted by the species mass fraction of the species key. This term is the chemical contribution of the enthalpy. The second term is the integral from T equal T0, the reference state temperature, to T of the integral from k equal 1 to nsp of cp key y key dt. This second term is called the sensible contribution of the enthalpy. We can now compute the heat of reaction. The first law tells us that the variation of energy is equal to the heat transferred to the system minus the work done by the system. If there is no shaft or no viscous work, then the work equals PdV. If we neglect the change of kinetic energy and potential energy, the variation of energy is equal to the variation of internal energy. Therefore, du equal to dq minus PdV. As the enthalpy is defined as the sum of internal energy plus PV, dH is equal to du plus PdV plus VdP, or dH equal to the heat transfer to the system plus VdP. If we consider a constant volume reaction in a closed system, then an infinitesimal variation of internal energy equal to a small variation of heat. If we integrate this small variation of internal energy over a trajectories between two states, therefore it comes that delta U, variation of internal energy between state 1 and state 2, is equal to the heat transfer to the system over these trajectories. If there are no heat transfer within the system, so if the reactor is adiabatic, therefore the variation of internal energy is equal to 0. Let's now consider a constant pressure reaction in a closed system. As dH is equal to delta Q plus VdP, the integration of the variation of enthalpy over a trajectory in a constant pressure reactor reads delta H is equal to the heat transferred to the system at constant pressure. Again, if the reaction takes place in an adiabatic reactor, and if there is no shaft work or no viscous work, therefore the variation of enthalpy is equal to 0. Finally, if we consider an open system, a reacting flow, if there is no change of potential energy or kinetic energy, it can be shown that the variation of enthalpy is equal to the heat transferred to the system at constant pressure. Again, it is equal to 0 under adiabatic and no shaft work conditions. So the reactive system prior to the combustion is filled with fresh gases. Composition is YK1, temperature T1. This corresponds to an enthalpy H1. Combustion occurs, and that leads to the formation of products, or burned gases. The state of the burned gases is characterized now by species mass fraction YK2, temperature T2, leading to an enthalpy now equal to H2. We assume that the reaction takes place at constant pressure. We'll also assume that the system is adiabatic. Therefore, the heat transferred to the system by following a constant pressure trajectory is equal to 0. We also assume that there is no shaft and we will neglect the viscous work. You are an engineer in charge of the design of the combustion chamber. You will have to answer to two main questions. First, if you want to burn things, it's because you need heat. So the question is, what is the heat released by the combustion? Secondly, it can be useful to determine the temperature of the burned gases. At least, you want to know if the combustor wall will survive to such increase of temperature. So call it adiabatic flame temperature. So we have a constant pressure, closed system, therefore the variation of enthalpy between state 1 and state 2, fresh and burned gases, is equal to 0. It means that the enthalpy of the fresh gases, H1, is equal to the enthalpy of the burned gases, H2. We can express the mean mixture enthalpy in terms of the enthalpy of each species that compose this mixture. Therefore, it comes that the sum from k equal 1 to nsp of hk1 yk1 is equal to the sum from k equal 1 to nsp of hk2 yk2. Then, by decomposing the enthalpy into its chemical and sensible contributions, we obtain the following decomposition, where the sum from k equal 1 to nsp of the enthalpy of formation of species K times yk1 plus sum from k equal 1 to nsp integral from t equals 0 to t1 cpk yk1 dt. This is equal to the sum of the enthalpy of formation weighted by the species mass fraction of the burned gases plus a sensible contribution, which is sum from k equal 1 to nsp of t0 integral of t0 to t2 of cpk yk2 dt. The sum over the species of the integral from t equal t0 to t1 of cpk yk1 can be replaced by the integral from t equal t0 to t1 of cp1 dt, where cp1 is the mean mixture heat capacity of the fresh gases. The same operation can be done for the burned gases, where we can introduce the integral from t equal t0 to t2 of cp2 dt, where cp2 is the heat capacity of the mixture of burned gases. We rearrange a bit this equation. We move to the left-hand side the difference of integral of cp dt between burned and fresh gases, and we move to the right-hand side the difference of enthalpy and formation between fresh and burned gases. The first term in the left-hand side is the sensible enthalpy of products. The second term of the left-hand side is the sensible enthalpy of reactants. And finally, the term on the right-hand side is the specific heat of reaction. This equation explains the thermochemical process of combustion. Chemical energy contained in the fuel is released when the reactants are transformed into products. It involves heat that is quantified by the specific heat of reaction on the right-hand side. In adiabatic system, this heat serves to warm the burned gases. It explains the variation of sensible enthalpy on the left-hand side. Therefore, combustion is a process for which the total enthalpy is constant, and where the chemical enthalpy is converted into sensible enthalpy. We'll consider an example that is very hot. Combustion of hydrogen with pure oxygen, or hydrogen oxycombustion. It is a combustion reaction that takes place in the combustion chamber of the Vulcain engine, which is used during the second phase of flight of the Ariane rocket. The thermal power released in Vulcain is about 1 gigawatt. We will assume stoichiometric conditions. For hydrogen oxycombustion, global reaction reads, under stoichiometry, H2 plus half of O2 give H2O. If you look on tables, we will find that the enthalpy of formation of H2O is minus 13.45 megajoule per kilogram. The hydrogen being the stable form of the element H, the enthalpy of formation of H2 is equal to 0. In the same way, the enthalpy of formation of O2 is equal to 0. We write omega as the heat released by the flame. Omega is equal to the variation of heat of formation between fresh and burned gases, and this is equal to 13.45 megajoule per kilogram. The net calorific value of the fuel can be easily deduced from the heat released by the flame. Indeed, the net calorific value of the fuel is equal to the amount of heat release divided by the quantity of mass of fuel that has been consumed. Here it's equal to omega divided by the mass fraction of H2 in the fresh gases. The mass fraction of H2 in the fresh gases is directly given by the stoichiometric global reaction. Indeed, Yn2 in the fresh gases is here equal to the mass of 1 mole of H2 divided by the mass of 1 mole of H2 plus half of a mole of O2, which give 2 over 2 plus 16, which is equal to 1 over 9. The net calorific value of dihydrogen is therefore equal to 13.45 multiplied by 9, which is equal to 120 megajoule per kilogram. The second big question for the engineer is what is the burn gas's temperature? If you manipulate the energy equations, the goal of the game is to find T2, such as the integral from t equal to 0 to t2 of cp2 dt is equal to the integral from t0 to t1 of cp1 dt plus the sum of the variation of enthalpy of formation between fresh and burnt gases. Now we need a model to compute the integral of the heat capacity over the temperature. If you assume that the heat capacity is constant, therefore the integral of the heat capacity over the temperature is trivial. It comes that T2 equal to T0 plus Cp1 T1 minus T0 plus the sum of the enthalpy of formation of Yk2 minus Yk1 over Cp2. If you are in the specific situation where the fresh gas temperature equals the standard state temperature of 298 Kelvin, the equation is simplified. So if we assume that the Cp is given by the Cp of H2O at a constant temperature of 298 Kelvin, and if we do the math, then we find that T2 is equal to 7,500 Kelvin. Let's do it again, but with heat capacity taken at a temperature of, let's say, 2,500 Kelvin. If we do the math again, then we find a totally different solution where T2 is now equal to 4,800 Kelvin. To be accurate, it is therefore mandatory to account for the variation of heat capacity with the temperature. It is convenient to introduce a polynomial fit for the heat capacity in order to handle temperature dependencies. The polynomial fit involves coefficients from A1 to A7, which are available in table. If we do the math again, by using a polynomial fit for the heat capacity, we find that T2 is equal to 5,100 Kelvin. As you certainly know, a good engineer should, by definition, never trust his calculation. Imagine that you have a very tough temperature probe, which is able to resist to very high temperature. You will measure the temperature at the exhaust of your rocket. And you will find that the measured temperature is equal to only 3000 Kelvin. 2000 Kelvin of difference with your calculation. Why? The error comes from the first assumption that we made, the global step assumption. Indeed, we assume that H2 plus half of O2 give only H2O. This assumption is wrong, at least at high temperature where H2O cannot survive. At more than 3000 K, H2O dissociate into many species, OH, H, O, HO2, and so on. Such change of gas composition has definitely a strong impact on the computation of the burn gas temperature. I am sure that you are very impatient to know how to compute this burn gas composition. But for that, you will have to wait the next class where we'll talk about the second law of thermodynamics.